You're tuned in to the Education Evolution, and this is Lifelong Learning. This podcast is for the thinkers, the doers, and everyone who knows the most important lessons aren't always taught in school. I'm Mr. Jihad, and I'm glad that you made it here this week. I know that the time change has us all feeling a little bit off between the days being shorter, the nights longer, and the energy is just kind of all over the place. The fact that you still chose to tap in, reflect, and grow with me, it means the world to me. This episode is for the curious minds, the constantly evolving, and the lifelong learners among us. My goal is simple, that you walk away with an aha moment, or at least something that helps you see how education isn't just what happens in the classroom. It shapes how we live, the choices that we make, and the society that we're trying to build together, y'all. Because even though we may not be sitting in anyone's classroom anymore, the truth is we're always learning through the systems, the structures, and experiences that shape our everyday lives. Before I jump in, I want to give you a disclaimer. This episode is for education, not financial advice. Please consult a certified professional before making any financial decisions. So let's take a moment. It's fall, and it's typically open enrollment season, but this year looks a little bit different. We're in the middle of the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. Paychecks are delayed. Programs like SNAP, WIC, and Head Start are stalled. And the ripple effects are being felt everywhere. And it might seem strange to talk about money right now, but that's exactly why we should. When things feel uncertain, understanding your options and safety nets is more important than ever. It's literally survival. I'm going to take you back to the first moment that I had a little bit of an aha for myself. And so I remember my first open enrollment season, and I was confused, overwhelmed, asking my parents, what do I actually need? What's worth paying for? Who can I even ask? And then one day I heard someone mention the 15% rule for retirement savings. My mind was blown. Until that point, I thought people either opted out because it was confusing or they just did the company match and just called it a day. But realizing that there was a strategy behind how you invest and that I could make intentional decisions completely changed my perspective. And so maybe you've been there too, trying to figure it out on your own. And I know y'all, talking about money right now feels heavy, especially if you're already stretched extremely thin. But knowing your benefits, your protections, and your choices can be the difference between barely getting by and setting yourself up for what's next. So if you're listening to this and feeling a little bit tired or discouraged, remember this moment isn't the whole story. You're still being positioned. Every pause, pivot, and paycheck you plan around is shaping what comes next, and it will open back up, I promise. I have to take a moment to just talk about the basics that we never even got. Because before we talk about strategy, we got to get clear on what the foundation is, because clarity is power. And so let's jump into what is an offer letter versus a paycheck. So I know we got that offer letter. We're looking at that amazing number and we're like, oh my goodness, I am going to be able to make it. And then you get your first paycheck. So yes, that's when you realize that your gross pay is not your take home. And so knowing what you're actually going to be landing in your bank account is extremely important because there is a such thing called pre-tax versus post-tax. Your pre-tax contributions are those are the dollars that are going towards things like your 401k, your HSA, or even your flexible spending account. So those are things that are going to be coming out before you get taxed. And that's reducing your taxable income. And so post-tax means it's taken after the taxes. So it has less impact on your tax bill, but more flexibility later. And so when you're thinking about budgeting for this type of environment, you want to make sure that you're prioritizing your essentials. And so thinking about your housing, thinking about food, thinking about your medication, transportation. This really isn't about perfection. It's about survival and sustainability. And so a quick win that I like to tap into is monthly, or to be honest, even weekly with me. I'm auditing what is on autopay, what isn't on autopay. To be honest, I don't put a lot of stuff on autopay at all because I am not the type to just allow anyone to just come into my account and take anything. And so I would just highly encourage you to, if you want a quick win for the week, go through that account. It could be one little Amazon subscription that you may have signed up for a trial that you forgot that you were even still signed up and subscribed to Hulu or Stars or whatever it may be. And so try your best to really cut those extras and be intentional about the things that are coming out of your account. So once you know what's real, you can really use those tools that you already have access to. So next, want to take a minute and talk about what are those benefits? The ones that you might be underusing or didn't even know that you had. whether it be the 401k or your 403b and this 15% rule that I'm about to tell you about. Where did that 15% rule even come from? I remember, like I said, my mind was blown when I heard it. It came from a financial columnist by the name of Michelle Singletary, who writes for the Washington Post for a column called The Color of Money. And she recommends targeting about 15% of your income toward retirement. And to be real, let me just take a pause, because I know when you hearing 15%, I know that the first time I heard that, I'm like, how in the world am I going to contribute 15% of my gross to, and actually not even the gross, right? Because we talk about gross versus net. How are we going to contribute 50% of my salary to my retirement? That just sounds insane. But that's your contribution plus your employer's match. So if your employer matches up to 8% and you contribute 8%, that means that you'll get that 16%, which would meet the goal of targeting 15% of your income. So to be intentional, you really want to make sure that you are starting where you are. So that's, even if it's 3 to 5% of your salary that you're able to contribute, that's a step in the right direction, because the money that you're contributing now will accrue interest and amass all types of dividends and things. And so the more you put it off, the longer and the more it will take for you to contribute to get that number where it needs to be. And the reason why Michelle believes in it needing to be 15% of your salary is so that you can retire comfortably. So there is a method to her madness. While it sounds like a lot, I appreciate it. So another thing that you want to make sure you're doing is checking your vesting schedule. So this is knowing when your employer contributions are no longer your employer's, but they're yours. And so you really want to make sure that you know where your money is invested, because if your employer vests after 3 years of you being employed and you stay there for 2 years, that was me before, semantics, but you want to make sure that you get that full 3-year vesting schedule. And so make sure that you're looking up to know how much is being contributed when, and if it's 33% during your first year of vesting, is it 66% of your second year vesting, and 100%, and make sure that it's the calendar year. If you're planning to leave that company, make sure it's the calendar year that you depart and not the academic year. And that's a pro tip for my educators out there. Also, being intentional about where your money is being invested. Are you in a target date fund? So by 2060, this fund will no longer be having as risky of investments. And so that's typically what a target date fund is. Are you in an index fund, which means that it's split between, so there is a very popular index fund called the S&P 500, or are you just in a default plan with high fees? You want to make sure that the money that you are investing is actually being invested and accruing some type of something, and not costing you more to invest than it is for you to make money. So Michelle Singletary really helped me see that saving as paying future you first and not really trying to chase perfection. And so while I'm not at the 15% yet, I'm on my way, y'all. I'm on my way. The next thing I want to jump into is a health savings account. And this is for if you're eligible, because this one's gold. And the reason why is it's triple tax advantaged, which means that you get to put in pre-tax contributions, it grows tax-free, and you're able to take money out of it tax-free for qualified expenses, of course. And so the goal here is to be investing in that health savings account and not to touch it. And the reason why is if you can pay for those small expenses out of pocket for now and let that HSA grow as a long-term investment, the amount of money that you will have in that account is insane. So I would just highly encourage you to look up HSA accounts and investing. And I think that you'll find a lot of important details and facts that truly are helpful. Another type of benefit is a flexible spending account. This typically is a use it or lose it, but I would highly encourage you to kind of check if your employer offers some type of rollover or grace period. And the reason why is that I've worked at an employer before, and you are able to roll over up to $500, but you have to spend that $500 that you roll over by June the 1st. And so different employers have different grace periods and or rollovers, and some employers don't even opt into that. But be sure to check that out before you opt into what an FSA is. Something else that I'll call out there is that FSAs are typically perfect for those predictable costs. So think prescriptions, maybe your contacts, or even copays. So they are very relevant and useful, because sometimes I've been in the position in which I'm like, I do not want to pay for this out of pocket. Can I just swipe this card? And that card it has come in handy as being an educator, swiping for an inhaler or swiping for my allergy medication. So just thinking about those types of, you can kind of like put pre-tax money into that account to kind of cover those costs. The next thing that I feel like is heavily, heavily, heavily slept on is our employee assistance program. And I don't know why it's slept on. I think maybe it's because it's just not as accessible. I think that sometimes your EAP is something that you have to do a lot more work to kind of find or identify. But one thing I want to call out is that your EAP, it offers free therapy sessions sometimes, legal consultations. So if you're in an accident and you're trying to figure out, okay, do I need to contact, should I get a lawyer? Am I at fault? You can have a free legal consultation oftentimes. Something else that it offers, financial coaching, even crisis support. I've even heard of them providing life coaching. So like there are all different types of things that I think that we most times don't even think about. Oh, let me hit my EAP up, but hit your EAP up. It's there for a reason. Make sure you're using it. And right now, transparently, with the layoffs and like shutdowns, just really reshaping the workforce, knowing how to leverage these tools isn't just optional. It's really about strategy, y'all. Like you have to be strategic in this environment where people are losing roles, people are losing opportunities, and trying to figure out ways to, maybe it's debt restructuring so that you don't have to worry about credit cards right now, whatever it may be. This next piece is for my folks who are 1099 and entrepreneurs. This may not apply to you. And if so, I'm sorry, but this is very important. And you may be thinking about becoming a 1099. And so this is also something that I just want to talk about for a quick second. If you're self-employed, your playbook looks a lot different, but the principles really do stay the same. You want to be intentional about your quarterly taxes. And what do I mean by this? No one is taking that money out of your check. So you are not a W-2 employee. And so make sure that you're setting those taxes aside as you earn that money. And the reason being is that you can receive a tax penalty if you do not pay that quarterly. And there are a lot of other different stipulations that you have to take into account. So whether or not you're S corporation or LLC or a limited liability partnership, there's all these different things. But the the rule of thumb that I typically do is about 20 to 25%. If I'm doing something, any type of activity that is going to be classified as a 1099, I'll try my best to make sure I'm saving about 20 to 25% of those funds so that I can pay that tax bill. And another thing that you could potentially look into as a 1099 is a SEP IRA or a solo 401k. And both of these have higher contribution limits that a traditional IRA does not have. And something else that you want to be mindful of that you're making sure that you're filing for is whether or not you're using for as a 1099 employee, do you have a home office? Are you filing for the phone that you use, your cell phone, if you're using that for business purposes, the internet that you're using, mileage, software? Make sure that you're keeping all of those receipts and make sure that you are either working with some type of bookkeeper that is allowing you to keep track of everything, or a financial advisor who is allowing you to kind of align your finances with your goals so that the small moves that you're making can be even more powerful when you are, or as you are, your own boss. The next point that I feel like is extremely important is, small moves can equal big impact. And so in seasons like this, the slow momentum that you're making is more so important as opposed to trying to perfect every single thing, especially when it comes to money. And what I'm thinking about here is trying your best to build some type of emergency habit. And what do I mean by this? $10 a week to put into that emergency kind of fund is, even though it doesn't feel like a lot, over time, that adds up and it matters. And try your best to use that as an opportunity to avoid new debt if possible. I know that is hard, especially in this environment where inflation is crazy high, grocery prices are crazy high, California gas prices are crazy high. So it's really about trying your best to look at your expenses monthly, look at them weekly, try to get a good gauge of like how much you're putting out there. Don't just be throwing money and swiping the card. I've heard of people who have just gone back to taking out cash. I know that some places don't accept cash, but I heard about folks taking out cash so that they know how much they're putting away. I've heard about people who have taken out cash so that they can try to do that in a savings place as opposed to just putting money into an account. So do what works for you. So the last thing that I want you to do is to be intentional in the next week. And the way that you can be intentional in this next week is to do these last couple of things. I will give you 5 or 6 tips. The first is to log into that 401k account, that 403b, that IRA, and write down what is your contribution? How much are you contributing per paycheck to this account? And then also note what are the fees that are coming out for you even being involved in this account. And then I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. Within that account, check those allocations to see what's being invested where and what those year over year returns are on those investments. The next thing is if you're a 1099, open that separate tax savings account so that you can just automate that transfer so that you don't have to get to the end of the year and be like, oh, damn it. Here we are again. I did not put that money away. Just open up a separate tax savings account and automate that transfer so that you are stealing from yourself and you can be smiling at the end of the year or in come April tax season time, and you can make sure that all of those taxes are paid. The next one is call your HR and ask what's included in your EAP. It could be, I've heard of people contacting their EAP and then being able to find that their medical provider, their medical insurance provider gives them a $500 gift card if they participate in monthly health checks virtually. Like there is free money that is out here. Do whatever you can to save money and cut costs. And lastly, share this episode or a verified resource with someone who needs it. We are in a space in which when we know better, we do better. And so if we are able to tell somebody about one fact from today, that can help change the trajectory of not only their life, but our community. And that's what we need to be more about is community as opposed to individualism. So let's lean into that. That wraps up today's lifelong learning episode. I hope you walk away feeling a little more grounded and a little more in control. If this stirred up guilt or worry, breathe. Give yourself grace. We've all made money moves we'd rethink. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. We're all lifelong learners. Stay grounded, stay informed, stay open. And if this hits home, share it with a friend. Subscribe to us on YouTube and tap in with us on Instagram to keep the conversation going. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep learning.